Hi, I'm Debbie with Nixene Publishing, and today we have a special interview, Steve Rodgers, and we are interviewing Ray Gibbs. Good morning or afternoon to you, gentlemen.
Hello.
Now, the Director of Commercialization, is that right?
That is correct, yes.
And also the Chairman of Planer Tech. Let's see, former President of Business Development for Haydale. You are a very busy man.
I'm also Head of Standardization between China and the UK for the BSI ISO TC229 event.
What do you see as the single biggest challenge right now to commercialization of graphene?
That's a great question, Steve. You should have warned me before you started that one. Thank you so much. I think there's a multitude of challenges. I would have said 3 years ago, supply chain. I don't believe that to be quite the case anymore. If you wanted to get graphene-based materials in accordance with the ISO standard, you can get it in tons now. You can get graphene oxide from China as well. There are regulations, REACH regulations, EPA regulations still exist, so the chemical side of life becomes a bit of a difficulty. I don't see any challenges other than industry saying it's not invented here, why do I need to do it? And I think that is one of the biggest single issues. And I don't blame them for saying that, because if it isn't broke, don't fix it. However, the mindset has got to be, if I need something to be faster, better, or cheaper, how am I going to do that using existing materials? No, let's go on to advanced materials, add a very small percentage, and we're talking of 0.1, 0.2 of 1% to make a massive difference. You can change your product very quickly and beat the opposition.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great that this is happening, because when you take the if it's not broke, don't fix it approach, then you're limiting. When you have something new that's coming along, and if you don't grab into it, someone else will, and then you're behind on the competition.
So we are seeing as well, though, Debbie, quite a lot of products are out in the marketplace now. With the running shoes has come out from the university. We've seen the Samsung and the Huawei actually have used their material to actually do thermal improvements of their mobile phone. 21 million phones have got it in to help the battery life. You've got the Ford Mustang being taken up with some material out of America, XG Sciences, which is actually improving the acoustics, but also improving the thermal dynamics of the engine bay, and it keeps on going. So I think there's going to be more and more of this. It always needed one or two to start to create this bow wave of desire to make things happen, and it's happening now, and that's good to see. We always say, too, that graphene is only 15 to 16 years young. If you think about other materials, it takes a long time to get them in the marketplace. I often talk about carbon fiber, discovered, founded in the United Kingdom, given to Rolls-Royce and Courtaulds, who did absolutely nothing with. Taken on by Toray, the rest is history. They dominate the world in carbon fiber manufacture, and it is everywhere. From being absolutely nowhere, it's everywhere. But it took 25 to 30 years.
And that's not unusual in new material and new technology development. That period of acceptance is actually almost quick in some cases.
It is. If you think about polycarbonate, Bayer invented polycarbonate. At the 19th year of their 20-year patent, they produced the first manufactured process in scale and dominated the marketplace in polycarbonate as a consequence. But it took 19 years to do that. The businesses we're talking about here, Steve, as well, are big businesses. They got long arms and deep pockets. They can afford to actually, A, take their time, but also B, get it right. The smaller fleet of foot businesses, which is where the graphene industry's gone at the moment because of the way it is, has required and needed grant funding, university funding. It's required governments to help and private equity to come in and start funding. And private equity has got in too early. It's lost money. And now at the moment, it's going to come back, because we're seeing now an active marketplace in graphene 2D materials. You've got standards, so everyone knows what playing field they operate on. You've got a supply chain that works. provided you know who to go to. And you've got places like SAMPI, which is talking about it at management level. You've got other presentations, and you've got the Geek, which is scaling up, and a range of other fantastic institutions all around the globe beginning to look at the advanced materials and make things happen to change effectively the world. We're talking about adding graphene into concrete. Who would have thought adding graphene into concrete would help? Well, it removes enormous amounts of CO2. The world is 6% of all the CO2 comes from concrete manufacture. It's enormous. And then if you're adding almost infinitesimally small amounts of graphene into a concrete mix, you're improving a lot of the mechanical properties of concrete, including its ability to cure and finish off quicker, so you can build quicker, and it's stronger. It's got more compressive strength.
We've seen that graphene it touches basically every industry that you could think of, and where the question ends up being, what industry doesn't graphene have the capability of impacting in a positive way?
It cannot. I mean, there are parts of what we do. There's obviously the biomed sections of world medicines as well, that graphene can help in terms of the way it works, but there are certain things that are genetic that you cannot, the graphene won't touch and deal with. That's not to say that part of the application that it's involved with cannot be enhanced with graphene itself. Let's take a sensor, for example. Lots of people are trying to use their watches and other devices to measure temperatures and gauge reactions into bloodstreams without having to use a standard sensor. Such as the surface area of graphene, you can create very, very highly efficient and diagnostically brilliant sensors that can do all of this work. And one thing that is beginning to finally get into people's minds is graphene is not necessarily as expensive as you might think, because it's about the price performance ratio. And if you're adding something which is 0.1 of 1%, and it's costing you $100 a kilo, and compared to something else that you're adding at 20% and it's costing you $25 a kilo, what's better? And I think that the buyer needs to work out what is better in terms of the price performance ratio to make things happen. Sometimes cheapest is not necessarily best, but in graphene's worlds, less is best. It's because of the high surface area and the ability of the graphene to then effectively agglomerate and create a massive ball that doesn't do anything. And that degrades everything that you're looking at doing from a performance ratio. It's all about making sure that the graphene is homogeneously, uniquely, and totally dispersed into something good.
I want to thank Ray for being involved in the summit. It's really quite gratifying to have somebody at his level with his experience as one of our featured speakers. And I want to thank him for taking the time for this interview. I really appreciate you doing that, Ray.
That's okay, Steve. I'm all about getting graphene as widely known and as widely spread as potentially possible, because I do believe that it has the opportunity to change the way we look at things in everyday life, from your batteries to your electrification of your car, to the way your phone works, to satellites in space with thermodynamic requirements. And I did hear a Nixene publication on the other day on elevators to the sky, which I thought was actually pie in the sky initially, but I now know it's not necessarily so. So I think the sky is the limit, or maybe beyond the sky, because we're going beyond that, actually, to be honest. So yes, I'm delighted to be involved. I think SAMPI is a great organization, and I'm looking forward to it immensely.
Thank you so much for your time, and I've learned so much from you. And I think this is I think people are really going to enjoy hearing this, especially some of the people who may have been a little bit skeptical, to be able to hear all of the facts that you've been able to share with us today.
So I've got some really interesting businesses that I'm looking at scaling up, and I'll tell the audience about some of those quite outstanding potential opportunities that are flying around. Looking forward to it.
Wonderful.